Welcome everybody to the Fantasy Golf Insider webcast and podcast. I'm Jeff Bergerson, joined by my partner, Zachary Turcotte. We are with fantasygolfinsider.com, your number one resource for everything fantasy golf and DFS golf. Be sure to come join us and become a premium subscriber if you have not yet. This broadcast is available in podcast form as well on iTunes and Stitcher. You can check that out if you just want to listen to us rather than watching us. Be sure to give us a good review because that helps our SEO and everything. So do that. Give us 5 stars and a nice glowing review would be nice. Zachary, I am very tired because I was up to like 2 or 3 every single morning.
That's not your normal?
That's not my normal because I get up at 6 in the morning.
Oh, so, I don't do that.
Yeah, I know you don't. But for the CIMB Classic, it was very entertaining. We're rolling through 3 rounds, and then the 4th round,
excruciating.
Yeah, it was hard to watch because a bunch of my guys dropped back. I was second in the clubhouse going into the final day, only a 3 points out, and just fell completely back when
everything was on pace for Russell Knox until late in the 3rd round. He hit that one shot into the water, and then it just completely unwound.
Unfortunate.
It never got back on track. It doesn't take much. Sometimes it's just one bad shot and just throws the guy's head far enough off so that he's out of it. But
it
was a little frustrating. I had Justin Thomas in my write-up last week, but he's fairly popular in terms of a tournament play, so it didn't give us enough distance.
Here's one of my takeaways is I faded Justin Thomas in GPPs for the most part because I was wrong. I thought his ownership was going to be really high.
And
I thought his and Ryan Moore's would be really high. I projected around 25% for both of them when they were at 13 and 15% respectively.
Yeah, I was a little bit shocked by how low. I think maybe people just have that bias. I think it's specific to the winner. Had they each been 2nd place or 3rd place
maybe
last year, I think people would have actually thought, oh, well, I'm going to get in on this guy, I'm going to be buying on this guy, and it wouldn't have been as big of an issue. But the fact that they have won it previously, for whatever reason, there's like a stigma applied towards those players a little bit, or I feel like the pros actually get away from those guys. Like, they can't win twice in a row, right?
But they can.
They can.
Especially here.
Exactly.
And this, you look at the tournament history year after year on this course.
Guys are really consistent.
Seriously. So Moore back-to-back, Thomas back-to-back. You got Lahiri, who I did have because I thought his ownership was down.
He's won here before.
He won
there. He was on the verge of winning. You had Woodland, who took 2nd 2 years in a row.
Yep.
So.
Consistently on this course. So remember this for the future tournaments that course history means a lot here, which is what shocked me about Thomas not being heavily owned. And because of that, I didn't own him much in GPPs or at all, and it hurt.
It was rough. A lot of our guys were in great position in rounds 2 and 3, and then they just slid back just a little bit. I was anticipating that Cabrera Bello might make a run, Grillo might make a run.
Yep.
Didn't happen.
Nope.
A few lesser likely types of names ended up making moves.
Lahiri throws up his 9-ball. If he doesn't do that, then it's a different tournament.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. You really don't expect it when guys are just scoring
on this course.
Birdie, and then all of a sudden somebody puts up like an 8 or a 9, and you just think, how is that even possible on a course like this? So. Yeah, it was a little bit frustrating overall. I actually had pretty good success. I was a winner for GPPs. I was a loser for cash. So it kind of offset things a little bit, but it had the potential going into the last round to be a really big weekend, and then unfortunately unraveled a little bit. So
it sure did.
A little bit frustrating, but you get that with no cut events, you know? And you start looking at Thursday and you see people getting so excited.
I know.
Here's where I am, guys.
I know.
Look how great I'm doing. It's
They're
Thursday.
taking screenshots on Twitter.
We're 6 holes in.
Then you don't see any screenshots come Sunday anymore from those same people.
Relax. If you get excited about the events that have a cut on them, then really need to push back. Wait until there's maybe 2 or 3 holes left on the final day before you start getting too excited. So it was entertaining. I like having the late night golf on, and we'll get that again this week in China.
We will. We also had a very nice week for NFL.
Yeah, NFL was fantastic. I really dug in this week. I did a little bit more in-depth of a write-up. Thursday, we used some Thursday players, which was really hit and miss. One hit really well in Montgomery, but I feel like sometimes I actually get penalized for paying almost too close of attention to
No
what's
doubt.
going on. And so I'm really feeding off of any little tidbit of information that I get. So I'm patiently awaiting the actives and inactives before the Thursday night game to make my final decision on Ty Montgomery. And out of nowhere, I see Davante Adams is active. And I thought, this is bizarre. 4 days after he gets a concussion, and now he's active on Thursday. And I see all these guys on Twitter saying, oh, he's just a body double. He probably won't even play. I'm like, they're not fucking around with this guy with a concussion just to throw him into a uniform and have him on the sidelines. Like, they really pushed to get him active. He's going to be a part of the offense. I thought that might limit Montgomery's pass catching ability somewhat if he was out of the game. I figured, well, Montgomery will line up just in the backfield, then it'll probably cut down on some of the passes. So I halved my exposure to him on Thursday, which hurt a little bit. And then we had Meredith, which really hurt one of the rosters.
Sucked.
So I had to kind of take a different approach to the two Thursday lineups after I halved my exposure. So I did a little bit of a longer write-up. And then I put together a Sunday lineup. The half my Thursday lineup absolutely killed. It ended up scoring like 197, the one that had Montgomery. The other half was like in the 150s, so we're a little bit short on that one. But the Sunday only was an absolute monster. Went off for 205 points yesterday. Obviously cleaned up every cash game that I entered with it, as well as did really well in GPPs.
Because the chalk is doing it this year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the difference. That's a big difference, I think, with football and in golf, is that with golf, a lot of the strategy that we talk about with GPP events really breaks into the aggregate exposure, that total ownership from roster to roster that you put together, and how the winning team, it's pretty consistent week to week and being right around that 60 to 80 kind of range, usually 60 to 75. That's kind of the sweet spot, depending on the tournament, how many guys are in cut versus no cut. But football, if you don't own the chalkiest guy and that player goes off, like Julio Jones, or
AJ Green,
or those substitute
DeMarco
running
Murray.
backs, you're screwed. So for football, it is a lot different. You can't miss on those. Like, you just can't make the mistake of not having those and fading those guys. It's really finding the one or two diamonds around all those ones that are pretty well locked in for big days, just because football is so much easier to go through and figure out touches and figure out yardage and figure out points. And that's what I do when I do my write-up each week. I just kind of walk it backwards. What's my goal for points? Well, I want to be around 150 to 160 every week for cash. And then I just work backwards and take out each guy's total. And kind of going through that, I can figure out where I need to pay up, where I can afford to pull back. I mean, yesterday Gillislee goes out.
Right.
Which is another frustrating announcement right before the game started.
I hated that, because then I was still jockeying, like, is McCoy still going to, or is he just coming, are they just saying he's active?
And that's the thing. And so with the last second information, sometimes you're being on top of it is really good.
Yep.
Which it was for McCoy, because then I got Gillislee out of there. And I didn't get a lot of points out of Mike Davis, but he got a touchdown. So he covered his value, which was fine. But, and then other circumstances, you get information like Davante Adams is now active and makes you second guess yourself. And you miss a little bit too. But, overall, pretty good week. I'm pretty happy with the way that the teams have been going every week. It really haven't been anything below about 150 or so. So if we haven't been cashing pretty easily, we've been right on the cusp. So NFL's been great if you haven't had a chance to check out the write-ups. Typically, they come out Friday or Saturday. A lot of you are just on my case. It's Tuesday night. Where's my NFL write-up? I haven't even read an injury report. I haven't seen any models yet. I haven't studied the matchup charts, anything. So
NFL, you have to wait till the last minute.
If you're reading somebody else on NFL and they're putting their write-up out on like a Wednesday or a Thursday, that's just too early. It needs to be like Friday night, Saturday morning at the earliest.
And then
when you put that Sunday lineup in that I put out initially, check a half hour before the game. Because 10:30 a.m. on Sunday, which for us is an hour and a half before our noon kickoff, there's going to be changes that end up happening. You're going to get the active, inactive list that comes out, and it's going to be there's going to be one or two surprises on there each week. This week it was LaShawn McCoy. It's like, whoa, he's active. And then I was suspecting that Jamal Charles would be active this week, even though he had the swelling in the knee. I just was willing to write that off because I just didn't figure he would see that much action. But always check about a half hour before, because I know a couple of you missed the Gillislee swap right there at the end. So that's always important with football, to be right on top of things all the way up until kickoff.
So that's completely free for premium members. Just click on the picture of the football on the right-hand side of our homepage and check out Zach's write-up every week. It's been very, very good. Back to golf. This week we actually have 2 events. One is the one that we'll focus on. That's the WGC, the HSBC over in China. So we'll talk mostly about that. The other one is the Sanderson Farm, which the contests on DraftKings are
Just
less
thrilling.
than exciting. The $300 is featuring like 17 players.
Should the 5 of us just lock that down right now? Down here? I mean, we can just fill that up right now.
The $3 has like 3,000 entries, so it's kind of weak. I don't even know if I'll bother playing it.
And it's not that I won't do somebody. It's just the time that it takes me to do comprehensive research for an event like that. It just the payoff. You have to basically win to feel like it was at all worth your time. And I'm certainly not going to enter 50 lineups when first prize is what, $500 or $800 or something like that. Probably not too terribly high. So if you don't win that after you put in a bunch of hours to do the research, it doesn't seem.
So we'll have some information. We'll have like the tournament history and everything on there.
More than likely, our columns will just have a mention of it for a couple of the names that stood out.
Perry will do a Sanderson Farm preview. So
I'm not going to go all out for a full-on daily spin.
Not for a daily spin.
It just doesn't make a ton of sense.
Right. So we'll focus on the WGC. It's at Sheshan International Golf Club.
Did you practice that?
Yes, I did. I order that every time I go to the Chinese restaurant. It is the West Course. It's a par 72. It's just under 7,300 yards. Make sure to note that, again, it is a no-cut event, just like last week at the CIMB. It's a longer course. All 4 par 3s are over 200 yards, so keep that in mind. Tournament history is a factor as it's been played here, except for what? Like 2012 wasn't here, is that right?
2012. Yep. 2012 was the year that it was not.
Okay, all right. Key stats: strokes gained tee to green, strokes gained putting, birdie or better percentage, par 5 scoring, driving accuracy, and proximity over 200 yards. Those will be built into our model at the proper weightings. If you would like to adjust that, feel free. It's completely interactive. You can definitely do that. What's your strategy going into this week, Zachary? Are you going a stars and scrub approach? Or are you doing a
pretty much across the
balanced
board? I think a lot of it will be stars and scrubs, although I think you can put together some pretty good balanced lineups.
That's what I did last week, and they were pretty solid.
I mean, if you look at some of the names down here, I mean, just on the first sheet, you go down to 7,600, you got Cabrera Bello at 7,600. That's you don't want me to start right there? Okay.
No, I think he'll be very highly owned, I think, because that is kind of surprisingly low price.
I don't know why his price went down.
I know.
Like, that doesn't seem, I mean, 10th place last week, that's pretty good. Right. And then, right in there next to him at 8,000, other European players. For all of you who have been playing Europe over the last few months, this is where some of that should start to pay off, because you got Alex Noren at 8,000,
who's been red hot,
who's been killing it over in Europe with several wins.
Wiesberger at 7,700, right there too.
That's a pretty good discount.
Crazy.
So I definitely don't discount going in and buying up. And even a guy at like 7,400, like Louis Oosthuizen, who consistently has done well here for top 15 finishes, just one after another after another. You get a lot of very consistent names in that middle 7,000 range. You'll get Russell Knox. He's at 8,600. He's the defending champion. He's been playing really well. He's got a couple of wins over the last season. So I think you can fit him pretty easily onto a roster. Martin Keimer at 8,700. Seems to have really picked up his game over on the European Tour over the last year. Yeah, so there's plenty of ways. But at the same time, if you do want to start up at the top, which...
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty tough to ignore Rory and Dustin.
Rory and Dustin, I mean, I can't see either of those guys just laying an egg at this event. And again, they may not win the event, but I have a hard time believing that they'll be too far outside of the top 10.
Probably not.
More than likely the top 5. I feel like they'll both be competing down the stretch for a championship. So I think starting my roster, those are definitely guys that I will look up at, because there's plenty of guys in the lower range. So if you start out with DJ at the top, at 12, or I guess Rory's the top price at
12-1, yeah.
12-1. But if you start with DJ at 12,000,
11-9,
you just jump right back down to the names that we just discussed,
right?
And they all fit right onto your roster. You don't
Yep.
really have to go dumpster diving too deep to find guys that are going to show up.
Do you think there's something to be said about the guys who played last week in Malaysia?
Maybe. I think so. I mean, I think they will be a little more well adjusted,
acclimated, and
I mean, if you look at, I think so. So I think guys like Justin Thomas will be a little more comfortable.
Ryan Moore.
We try not to look too much at guys traveling coast to coast, or a couple hour time difference. That's probably not going to screw up your body too much in a week. But if you're going 12 hours to the other side of the world now. We don't really know what the travel schedule was for some of these guys.
No,
so
some of these guys could have been over there a while.
Some of these guys probably rolled in a week ago, have been playing some practice rounds. This is a WGC event, so there's plenty of money that's on the line for those that do choose to show up and play this week. So I think there might be a little bit of an advantage, but I would be hard-pressed to think that you'd be able to see anything statistically or historically that would show that for certain.
Okay. It looks like, when you look at the results, also you see there are a lot of bombers who do well at this course. So a Rory or a Dustin or a JB Holmes or
Bubba
a Brooks or Bubba. Yep, that's right.
Yep, the Miracle.
Yep. So I'm kind of looking at a mixture, but then you also see some other guys who aren't necessarily bombers, but more ball strikers, like a Russell Knox last year.
Yeah, very much so. And it's interesting, I guess, looking down at some of the lower names on the list, which of these guys are you targeting that maybe we haven't been? I think we've probably hit quite a few of them so far, but are there any other ones that are, say, like below 7K that you would want to be looking
So
at
below 7K, I like Kevin Kisner at 6,900, far from a bomber, but a good ball striker. I like him. A sneaky play who will be under-owned, I think, is Chris Wood at 6,800.
Sure.
Tons of talent there. A lot of people don't realize that he's coming off a pretty significant injury, so he's back now, and I think he's a lot better than his price reflects. So if you're looking for a GPP type play, I think he's got a lot of upside. Shane Lowry looks like a good bargain at 6,700, so I'm liking him in that range as well. What do you think?
I'll probably take a look at Soren Keldson. I think it's 6,800. You're getting a pretty good bargain for a guy who definitely has plenty of upside. And then you got to at least take a look at some of the guys in that super low range if you don't want to fill up the end of your roster. It's not as ugly as you're making it sound, I think. I mean,
which Zhang do you like?
Racist.
Pick a Zhang.
Any Zhang will do. Any Chew? Yeah. Stop. All right, so I mean, there's a couple of guys that are down there. Not necessarily even the Chinese players or the Asian players, but a guy that we've been on in Europe for quite a bit of time. At 5,900, we got Bradley Dredge.
Right.
And he's missed a few cuts of late over in Europe, which is a little bit frustrating. But again, we're getting 4 full rounds here, so it doesn't matter if there's a blow up in round 2 along the way. At 5,900, you're mostly just hoping the guy can be above like 40th. You just want him to be in like the top half of the field.
Yep.
So I think that's a pretty reasonable way to go. Hao Tong Lee did very well here last year. He was in the top 10. He's at 7,000.
Right.
I don't like that
as
much. It's a little frustrating. He's a little bit more well known now that he's had that top 10 finish, but definitely another guy to take a look at. And Young Han Song at 6,500 has just been playing really well. Had 5 straight finishes in the top 10 on the Asian tour. Coming into last week, and he finished 21st. So, at 6,500, I think we're getting some pretty good value out of there. Is there anybody else?
Maybe Tanahara at 6,000, I think, is a GPP type play. I'm willing to take a shot on him. That's about it. I probably won't have a lot of guys in that 6,000 price range, I don't think.
Yeah.
Because I like a more balanced approach.
So you're going to go balanced. I'm going to go more stars and scrubs.
Yep. Because I think for GPPs, you're going to get you're not going to have high ownership on a lot of these guys, like a Wiesberger, or how about a Richard Bland at 7,300?
It's another guy we played in European events.
Yeah, we have him. He comes up in our optimal every single week. It'll be interesting to see how his game translates into a really stacked field like this, because he's been top 10 machine basically on the Euro Tour lately.
Yeah, he's been very consistent in looking at him. Yeah, I mean, just looking at his last 6 events here, the worst finish he's got is 18th, and he has 4 top 10s. So, yeah, I mean, if he takes 20th here, am I going to be crushed? I mean, 7,300, it's not, that wouldn't be terrible for us. So, it's all going to come down to finding the winner. I mean, that's the tricky part with no-cut events, and that's where it can get very frustrating each week, is that if you don't get the winner on your team, you've got 0 shot at a GPP, obviously. And even cash games get tougher. If a particularly popular player jumps up there and wins the whole thing, and you don't have them in cash, like Justin Thomas last week, you're in trouble.
Yep.
So.
Okay. Is that all for the WGC? You want to talk a little Sanderson Farms action?
Yeah, sure. I guess we can. When I looked at the prices here, I'm just going to pull these guys up. I was really. This is an opportunity mostly just to watch. I can't see entering. Maybe I'll throw in a couple of $3 tickets just for fun. I'm not going to play cash over there this week. Just don't see the upside of throwing in a bunch of guesswork type of lineups. I mean, when you're looking at the tournament history, you think, ooh, David Tom's at 9,700 with 2 straight top 10 finishes here.
Right.
It gets really tough for me to be enthusiastic thinking I've got a big edge over everybody else here. I mean, the guys that you're going to want to watch are going to be the new players. I mean,
absolutely.
That's the biggest reason you're going to want to tune in to the event this week, is to see if all the guys who you watched the first week at the Safeway, now they come back again, you get a second look at them, and this time, if they did well there and then they do well again here, then you start to think there's a little bit of a pattern forming. Some of these guys are rising up, others maybe are not so much. So take a look at a handful of those guys. I mean, what's surprising to me was, I guess, when I first looked at this price list, and I looked down, I see Grayson Murray at 10,100 as the 5th highest priced player. That was the point where I knew I wasn't going to play cash games this week. When I thought, okay, so he's 0 for 1 making the cut on tour. And he is above 10K for the week. So, but be looking at guys, see how Grayson Murray ends up doing this week. See how Xander Schauffele shows up this week.
CT Pan,
Trey Mullinax, JG Spawn, all those guys that you checked out that first week. Just take some notes on what you see this time. So, I mean, that was big last fall, was seeing how some of these guys...
Well, in this event with Peter Malnati, when he won it, he was fresh off the Web.com tour.
Yeah, and then he made like 2 cuts the rest of the year.
Right.
So perfect example of, it's going to just not necessarily carry over, but yeah, you should see plenty from a lot of those guys. And then, sort of watch what the veterans are doing as well. I mean, you have some decent middling names up there.
They're not great.
No, they're not great.
If you were to lock in, let's just look at the top 10 price guys. If you were to take a shot on 1 or 2 of those guys, who do you feel most comfortable with? Is it just Chris Kirk, just because?
Yeah, I mean, Kazire looked good the last time out, and he looked good here last year. Although, I mean, when you see 11.3, he was 6,800 the other week.
That's crazy.
So that's a tough price to pay. I think Lucas Glover, he was pretty solid overall last season. He missed the cut by a stroke the other week, so I'm not holding that too heavily against him. There's not a lot of other guys on the list that really excite me.
The scary part about the upper price guys is that you have to drop down then if you do a double stack up top. You got to drop in the 6s, and that is Deadville.
Yeah, there really is not a whole lot down in that range at all. Are there any names at all that stood out for you?
No, none.
I'll tell you.
All.
I'll tell you. There's one in the $6,500 range. I'll be very interested in seeing
Austin
how he performs.
Cook.
It's Austin Cook. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he flashed about two seasons ago. He didn't make it into any of the events last year, but 2 seasons back, he got a flash, and he had a couple of decent showings on the tour, and then he was gone again.
He wasn't very good, we
didn't hear much from him from there. And I'm just thinking, was that just going to be a brief moment where he jumped up, and that's the last we're going to see of him, or does he have it in him to maybe take advantage of his talent, take advantage of some of the opportunities here, and make a little bit of a run.
Right.
6,500. That's one of the few names down in that list that I guess that kind of stands out. I think Brandon Hagee at 6,500 is playable if you're looking at
Xander Schauffele's at 64, one of the guys that you mentioned. That's
which
interesting.
Is strange that he didn't get any sort of bump. But guys who missed the cut are bumped way up. So I think
if you're going to play in one of the tiny little GPPs that DK is offering, you could take a shot on.
I think the hard part for me is that there are scrubs that I'd be able to identify. There's probably 10, 15 scrub range guys I'd say, yeah, I could take a shot here.
Yep.
But then when I go up to try to build my core at the top, who am I building my core around?
Right.
I mean,
you don't feel great about any of them.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Kirk at 11.7. I mean, he's been pretty good over the last couple of times out, but at 11.7, is he really a lock for a top 10? I mean, you want guys...
Absolutely not.
You want guys that when you put them in your core for 50, 60%, they're more or less you're going to find one or two of those guys who are going to make a big run. And there's nobody up here where I think, oh yeah, this guy's definitely going to be able to make a move. So I'm probably just going to take it easy. I will be watching that event, but not heavily playing it. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else to add before we wrap up?
We get a shot of the week here.
What do you want to do for shot of the week?
I think it's probably pretty obvious for Anderban.
Anderban, the 9-ball. It's always good when you can take a shot over a 9, because last week's was CH3's 9.
Yeah, he had a 9. So maybe we'll just find whoever shoots a 9 every week.
That's right. I will mention we will not be doing a webcast or podcast next week because Monday night is Halloween and we need to take our kids out trick-or-treating. Mm-hmm. So we're going to skip next week and we should be back the week after, right?
Yeah, I think
Not too many fall events left, and then once January hits, it's full steam ahead for golf and DFS. So
that's right. Get ready for it.
We're excited. Any questions or feedback, you can email us at info@fantasygolfinsider.com. We're at Fantasy Golfers on Twitter. We do Periscopes on Tuesday and Wednesday night, so be sure to check that out for last-minute lineup questions. DraftKings did put the lineup lock time as
it's a random
Tuesday night.
So don't freak out. No, our stuff is not going to be coming out early,
no.
and the tee time is not going to be at.
It will be PM. Wednesday night, probably around like 6 or 7.
The same time as last week.
Yep. So I don't know why DK insists on posting just a blatantly wrong tee time.
Just put it close.
Right. I know.
Put it close
so people aren't panicking. But
not 12 to 15 hours off.
I know. They insist on doing it, so don't freak out. It'll be Wednesday evening, but still go ahead and get your lineups locked before dinner on Wednesday. So thanks for joining us, and good luck this week.
Good luck.